So again, God encouraged too on the 7th year of the feast that you cancel all debts. So vassalage, again, it's when a country either dominates another one or they conquer them or whatever. Sometimes they'll sign these treaties. And it was to guarantee that a smaller state remained the faithful ally of the empire and did not pursue an independent foreign policy. So the Bible did have a somewhat similar standard. When you go near a city to fight against it, then proclaim an offer of peace to it. And it shall be that if they accept your offer of peace and open to you, then all the people who are found in it shall be placed under tribute to you and serve you. So they would become a slave in a sense, but it's not the word that we see in the Bible actually for slave, it's servants. God got really mad at Saul when he didn't protect the Gibeonites who had been under a treaty of sovereignty with Israel. So God took it very seriously. So finally, the kind of slavery that the Bible doesn't teach at all is chattel slavery. It's the type we had in the 19th century and the type that they had in these cultures around Israel. The A&E, which is again the ancient Near East, however, did not have the same respect for the face of slaves. Besides eye gouging, they resorted to branding, cutting off the ears, mutilating the nose, etc. in the law codes. These practices are not in Israel's law codes. You will not find any kind of slavery like this in the Bible, period. The ones that were slaves under the other types that we just mentioned, especially indentured servitude was most common, they had kinship rights, marriage rights, personal legal rights relating to physical protection, and freedom of movement and access to liberty. So I found this in the South Carolina Slave Code. So now we're going to compare 19th century slavery to the slavery in the Bible and see if they really are the same, because this guy from my fraternity insists that they're the same. Any slave who shall be guilty of homicide of any sort upon any white person, except by misadventure and defense of his master or other person under whose care and government such slave shall be, shall upon conviction thereof, as aforesaid, suffer death. Okay? So a slave that kills a white person gets the death penalty. Well, that's biblical, actually. Here's, be it enacted that if any person or persons whosoever shall willfully murder his own slave, so now we're turning the coin over. Now we're going to look at murdering your own slave. Every such person shall upon conviction thereof forfeit and pay the sum of 700, whatever this was back in, $700 or whatever. You pay a fine for willfully killing your slave. Oh, and by the way, if it's just manslaughter, you really didn't mean to do it, it's $300 or $350. So from the same slave code, it talked about if a person to his slave was to cut out the tongue, put out the eye, castrate, cruelly scald, burn, deprive any slave of any limb or member, they only had to give up $100. So the second fugitive slave law of 1850, when slaves were escaping, the South had come up with this agreement. They got this law enacted. And up in Boston, they were warning, at the time referred to colored people, they were warning them of the police to stay away from them because they were going to be fined. The police were fined if they did not carry out their job of capturing slaves that had escaped from the South. So they call them. So they could either be kidnapped by people from the South, or the police find them and return them. And if the police didn't do this, they had to pay a big fine. So this is from the Code of Hammurabi. This is a Babylonian law. If anyone receive into his house a runaway male or female slave of the court or of a freedman, and does not bring him out of the public proclamation of the major domus, the master of the house shall be put to death. So if you harbored a slave, you got put to death. What does the Bible say? You shall not give back to his master the slave who escaped from his master to you. He may dwell with you in your midst in the place which he chooses within one of your gates, where it seems best to him. You shall not oppress him. And yet this former college friend says that there's no difference between slavery in the 19th century and the Bible. And finally, here's again from the Babylonian Code of Law. If the prisoner die in prison from blows or maltreatment, the master of the prisoner shall convict the merchant before the judge If he was a freeborn man, the son of the merchant shall be put to death. If it was a slave, he shall pay 1/3 of a mina of gold, and all that the master of the prisoner gave he shall forfeit. Here's a key verse to remember in all this talk about slavery. The Bible says that if you kidnap or sell anybody, it's punishable by death. If you remember anything from the difference of slavery between the Bible and 19th century slavery and Middle Eastern slavery and all other types of all other nations, the Bible says if you kidnap somebody, it's punishable by death. It's a capital offense. And again, God repeated this in Deuteronomy 24:7. If a man is found kidnapping a person from among his fellow Israelites and regards him as a mere property and sells him, that kidnapper must die. So here's what he said on Facebook, this friend of mine, after all this evidence. So here's my comment. I said I've shown in both posts that I've made on the Facebook that slavery that occurred in America was squarely against biblical principles, and he said, "Rubbish, you have not shown me any such thing." So it reminded me of this clip from a movie, first thing that came to mind.
You can't triple stamp a double stamp! You can't triple stamp a double stamp, Lloyd! You can't triple stamp a double stamp! Lloyd! Lloyd! You guys!
Okay, sorry, I just had to throw that in there. The evidence, their minds made up despite the evidence. Okay, where did Cain get his wife? I think a lot of the creationists here know that answer.